Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So this is a very exciting panel, and I think we are standing between the lunch. So we'll try to do it quickly and also hopefully make it meaningful for all of you. And we have very esteemed panel here. We have Pallab, who is CHRO and CPO of Equitas Small Finance Bank. Then we have Chinmay, who is Group CHRO for GSK, and Dimple, who is Head HR of HSBC. Thank you to all the panelists for joining us. So let's start with the topic. Like the first important thing is that before you start thinking about engaging employee, it's very important to measure. So my question will be to you, Pallab. How do you measure the pulse of the organization, and what is your focus when you're doing that?
First of all, thank you, ETHR, for inviting me all the way from Chennai. Right? So sorry, I'm 55, okay, so confession. So I have not yet been able to take smileys as surrogates for the survey. Okay. So what I feel is that it's important to catch employee moods on the moments of truth, right? That's what I believe in. And let's try to get down to this moments of truth that I think, right? The first is, of course, our new hire, right? So, and that person is probably new to the culture, etc. So not only at the time of joining, but 30, 60, 90, 180, you need to have a pulse of that. So that's the first part. The second is, we take a lot of pride in culture, and I believe that HR has only two work, okay? One is ensure that knowledge, skills, abilities that is required for the organization is available with the organization as and when the need. And the second is maintain a culture where every employee can give his or her best, right? So those are only two things. And the rest of it is actually, you kind of come around that, right? So we do what we call a culture pulse survey every quarter, correct? And we have 5 values on which our culture is based: customer first, respect for people, ownership, transparency and fairness, and performance, pride of performance. So these are our 5 values, and we create some 12 questions around it, like Naukri, Gallup. So we do that pulse survey, right? Interestingly, I also do a pulse survey after completion of the most, dreaded work for HR, which is performance cycle, right? So
that is dangerous.
That's when HR is most hated. So after the PMS, we conduct a survey and try and take employee feedback and their feeling about how much fair, not about their ratings, not about the money, but how fair they felt the organization was in the entire thing. So that's the other part. Plus, we do what we call a voice of employee, right? Every year, at least once, every single department, and department I mean unit of 10 odd, right? So that's what we call a department. And they would have a voice where they can raise whatever concerns they have with HR. And before I I think critical is not the pulse or the survey, right? And critical is the second part of it, what we call as, in banking, it's something called CAPA, okay? Corrective action, preventive action, right? And those actions is what determine whether or not you're collecting data which is good enough for you in the survey. So it's not enough to do the survey, but please do take actions on the survey findings so the employees have belief in you.
No, that's a great answer. Thank you, Pallab. And just to also add, what we have seen in our experience at AdvantageClub.ai to run with thousands of organizations, it has now become very common to also start doing moodometers. And we have seen companies ask questions maybe daily, once a week as well. Very simple, one question, no touch. And also it's very important, how do you benchmark it against the outcomes that you're getting now versus other organization, and also what you used to get in the past. Now, since Pallab mentioned so much about culture, it's of course one of the most important ingredient in terms of building an organization. I'll come to you, Chinmay. What role does reward and recognition as well as well-being program and other employee benefits play when we are thinking about building cultures?
Yeah, hi Saurabh. Good afternoon, everyone. I don't know, there is some AI that ET team is using. They're always putting me panels just before lunch. Even yesterday was the same case. So I don't know if that brings out the best in me or the audience. See, before I get into that question, I think fundamentally we need to be very clear before we even get down to what should be our reward strategy, to really understand what's the industry we are operating in as an organization and the business model. And what do I mean by that is, are you a product-driven industry or a service-led industry? Are you an industry, your business model high margin? Is your business model linked to a listed entity or an unlisted entity? Many of these things determine which direction you will go, and that determines your business strategy. Okay, now if you are a company which is a leader in the market, your approach will be very different. If you are a challenger or a follower or trying to launch something new, will be very different. So as a rewards professional, first get that right, really understand what industry you are operating in, what's your business model, what's your business strategy. And then in order to meet that business strategy in that industry, what's your talent strategy? Okay. Do you have the right talent to meet that business strategy? Okay, and then there are several aspects. Are you hiring for skills, or are you hiring people for longer term careers, for example? Are you an organization which is a build from within organization, or you hire people externally a lot? Are you hiring people for driving growth, or are you hiring people for driving productivity? Once you have got a handle of that, is when you start looking at your reward strategy. And even in reward strategy, what you got to think about is, where does reward sit into your overall value proposition? Now I'll come to culture. So it cannot be a reward strategy in isolation. So if, like, I saw a chart before which Sumit was sharing, right? What's important for people, and culture also figured there. So in your value proposition, is culture a big part? That you are very confident about providing the right working environment for people? Is your value proposition talking about flexibility? Once you have got a handle of the entire value proposition, then you say, okay, this is gonna be my rewards. Then you can talk about, whether you want to target median or third quartile, or what is the competition? Are you competing with local players versus global players? Do you want the best talent or a good talent? And I think sum total of all this ensures that you have the right reward strategy. Now, coming back to listening to people, when you talk about employee well-being, fundamentally we always do these surveys or pulse surveys or employee listening tools that we have, but there is always a challenge when you are looking at what are the right benefits or well-being strategies to adopt. And the challenge is, what surveys tell us is what employees are looking for or what they really want. Sometimes they will not tell you what they really need, okay, because that no survey captures. For example, a Gen Z employee might say, give me full flexibility on benefits, for example. But if you stop covering them for, let's say, health insurance, what happens if an exigency happens, right? So it's a combination of what is needed versus what is valued by employee. And sometimes it's a combination of surveys which will give you quantitative data. And it's also a combination of qualitative data that you collect by having real conversations with people. For example, if I have to really figure out something is working or not, or should I launch something new, I will typically ask my market research people to have very intense focus group discussions with people across multi-generations, because that's another challenge you have. Because what market research people are good at is covering the insight, something which is not said, because like for any brand or a product, you don't know what the customer really needs. Sometimes you have to unveil and figure out what they really need. So it's a lot of art, a lot of science, and sometimes even after doing all this, there have been times where we have launched something and it hasn't worked. And sometimes we thought we'll pilot it and see whether it works, and it just takes off. So it's an interesting field, fascinating, and a lot of factors go into it.
Thanks a lot, Chinmay. I think Chinmay's answer was also a perfect example on how HRs can think like a business partner and take it from a strategic side and then move towards implementation. On you, Dimple, how do you think, just building on that, especially in the BFSI sector, where it's so competitive to really hire people, retain people, how do you think about building culture? How do you think about rewards playing a role in the world of building culture?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes. It's good to see that ladies can go last, so thank you for asking me the question last. I think Chinmay has answered all the questions, so he's taken that thunder away in terms of what I wanted to capture. But I think the nuggets from what he just said was that first of all, rewards and well-being are two different things. When you look at rewards and well-being, it has to be seen through a total rewards strategy. It has to tie back to the global strategy. Obviously, I belong to a global organization, so we look at our total reward strategy from a global lens. We look at it from the perspective of how do we bring it down to reality in countries we operate, and then localize and personalize benefits based on local needs and local requirements. So a strategy has to be definitely global, but it has to meet local needs and requirements when it comes to making sure that you're playing it black to the audience, which is our employees as customers in many ways. And that's really the pulse and the essence of defining a clear perspective. The one thing that we have seen, and I think the pandemic was a big booster around it, is that total reward strategy has to be a bit more agile. It can't be fixed in stone. For the longest time, we had our total rewards across many organizations fairly still and stable. Today, we see more and more agility around it. We need more benefit value propositions coming in. We need more intensive review of it. There is also a lot of statutory review of reward value propositions that are coming up. In fact, we were just talking about the labor codes coming up as well. So those are things that have to, or are injecting more evolution at a faster pace, and we all have to be much more agile. And also tie it back to what the organization's global stance is. How do you want to take it to the market? What is the stance that you want to take in terms of the value to customer, business outcomes, etc.? And that's where all those content associated with where you position yourself in the market, where you position yourself in the qualitative side of rewards specifically also comes. And it's a vast subject in itself when you look at that.
That's great. I'll follow this with you. Since we have spoken on the policy design side of it, what is the role of technology in your view? And what are the maybe 2 or 3 things that you should keep in mind when implementing any program and using technology with it?
See, it has to start with the user experience or the end user experience. All of us are tech users now, forcefully or otherwise, where we have apps on phones, wristwatches which are digital, etc. And all of us expect a basic bare minimum expectation out of technology. So there is an user experience part of technology. The other part which works with large organizations or even small organizations, how do you integrate what may already exist into an existing platform that enhances that user experience as opposed to disrupts it? The next thing is obviously the management of change associated with it, where you need leadership advocacy, the right kind of leaders backing it, understanding it, advocating it, wearing it on their sleeve, etc. And again, like I said earlier, there needs to be a more and more agility baked into the everyday solutioning. For example, today you may have an insurance policy that works for the current year. How are you continuing to evolve it at a faster pace, right? Is there a back-end toggle on off that you can do to enhance that further? Could you add more benefits to it? Could you add more critical care solutions to it? Could you add more things associated with learning, which may be added as a benefit? Could you add more things associated with it which are required from a care for family standpoint? These are all incentives that employees don't fully understand yet. They sometimes also feel that it's a given that these are things, and they also need to be spoken. So the last point I would say is, whilst you will have a good technology, but if an average employee doesn't understand what benefits or total rewards you're able to offer, the whole packaging of it through communication is the last nail on the head, more to say, in terms of making sure that everyone fully understands, advocates it, because it's not just leaders. We eventually want employees to advocate for the organization, both internally as well as externally.
That's brilliant. And yeah, I think one of the thing when I started in HR, one of the thing which really pained me was that the HR softwares were so outdated versus what was available in consumer. So when we started AdvantageClub.ai, we started saying that let's compete with the best in the industry, or rather across the tech industry, and not benchmark ourselves against the incumbents in the HR tech world, because that part of technology was, at least the user side, was relatively poor. Now coming to you, Pallab, we have spoken about offline some of the interesting challenges that technology has to solve for a reward and recognition to work in an organization like yourself. Would love for you to share that and other insights, that what would it take for a technology to really be successful in an organization like yourself, and there are many which can learn from that.
Yeah, my first take is that, it has to be up, right? Uptime. Any application, I'm from banking, so, you kind of withdraw money from ATMs or your mobile apps. It has to be up, right? So that's the first thing I would talk about. The second thing, I think what she mentioned correctly is integrating into the larger scheme of things. Single sign-on. Single sign-on is very important. Even when you're building an HR application, please try and ensure that the person, whatever his or her core application is, for us it's core banking system, right? So the core banking system must have an API for your HRMS to talk, right? If the person has to log into too many systems, the usage will go down. That's the truth, right? We are all trying to create the Netflix of rewards in whichever way, right? So that's the fundamental thing. So and as she mentioned, it's multi-generational, multi-geography. So it has to be simple to use for the consumer group that you are targeting, right? We were just talking offline about language. People may or may not be comfortable with English as my first choice. So I have to give them the option of navigating this reward world in a local language, right? So that's something that's critical to us. The fourth thing, which is extremely critical from a banking standpoint, is of course, data storage, data confidentiality. We are a regulated industry, so we need to, even if I'm on the cloud, there are regulations kind of, stating whether I need to be in India, etc., what kind of data has to be stored in-house, what can be stored on the server and stuff like that. So those elements are other elements that I have to look at when I kind of create that, right? Yep.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think a lot of things they've said are very much of a hygiene for any program to be successful. It has to be integrated, it has to be single signed on. Now, coming to the interesting question, how do you convince your bosses? Or do you really have to convince while getting the budgets for programs like this? Because now the world has changed, but 10 years back, 8 years back, any employee experience program beyond what is required was looked as pure cost. But I think the world has changed. So how do you look at ROI on the program like this? Let me start with you, Chinmay. Who is the person you have to take final approval from, or do you need to take from anyone, or you can sign off eventually completely yourself? Or how do you convince someone, and more importantly, how do you track success, measure success?
I think I think approval is more it's a bureaucratic process. Whether I approve or CEO approves or CFO approves. Ultimately, the question is what value it brings to the organization and the employees. And as Dimple said, anything that you do on the technology front, it has to make things simple and better and faster, right? So if you're proposing a technology solution, one, is it meeting that criteria? And once you launch it, don't fall in love because it's just a pet project and you were so passionate about it. But the proof of the pudding is what are people saying and you can see the trends on user adoption and usage. And if that's not working, be ready to kind of make a change and move on. Because these days there are enough analytics to tell you how the user experience and the user interface is appreciated, not appreciated. The kind of questions people ask every time you kind of design a new intervention with a new technology solution. And the moment you have a good pulse of that, either pivot, drop, and move on to something else versus just, what you call it, flogging a dead horse. So you don't flog a dead horse because technology is moving at a fast pace and you can't, if you know there is something which is clunky, move on. And we have learned, I remember we launched a tool around financial awareness. Okay, the whole thought process started with helping people with their financial planning, because that was the need which was identified, especially for younger population who may not be as savvy and all that. But that was a need. By the time it crossed all the compliance, bureaucratic processes, it became just a financial awareness tool. Okay. Now, someone was very passionate about the project, so we still went ahead and launched it, but there was no need in the beginning. And then because there was no need, there was no usage or there was no adoption, people were not looking at it, and eventually we had to drop it. But it took us 1 year to realize that it was not working and let's move out of it. So I think the agility to be able to, when you do implement something, the agility to understand whether it's working or not, and being a bit ruthless about moving on if it is not working is essential.
Yeah, totally agree with you again. Like at our case as well, our client success managers have a benchmark that you have to drive 90% redemption. Otherwise, if someone is getting money and 90% of them are also not going and using it, then what's the point? Why is the organization spending the money? And I think a lot of the problem also comes from a lot of partners. They have a lot of the partners in the space, and of course I don't want to name anyone, but a lot of technology partners have built businesses on concept of breakages, where they actually try to take the money away if employee doesn't use it. So that's something also that a lot of HRs don't know about, but as a company owner or as a program owner, of course, it's very important that people go and use it. And if anyone is telling you 60% is a good usage on the redemption side, it's not. The benchmark stands at 90, at least in this part of the world as of now. Moving on to you, Pallab. How do you, so there's one parameter on the utilization side. What other parameters do you look at while measuring success of a program like this?
Let me just come back to the first point, right? That, you said whose approval. I don't think that is material. What is material is that, what do your employees think? And have you been able to take those stakeholders on board? Because that is critical. Without that, we really, any program that you launch, and we have all done enough and more failures in our life, so it really doesn't matter, right? Now, in terms of what are some of the other metrics, as you said, other than adoption, is that you've got to check that what were you trying to achieve, and have you really achieved that? For example, I'll give a classic example. There are a lot of rewards for sales, right? It's very easy to kind of design a reward for sales. We tried to do something called Eagle Eye, and I guess all of you have seen the movie, but essentially what we are trying to see is that how can we reward people who are whistleblowing or detecting frauds for us, correct? Now, we did all that. Okay, this was a good one, but the measure essentially remains that whether the number of frauds have actually come down, because once I get so it is like it'll go up like a sine curve, right? Because now more people are reporting, but then it has to come down over a period of time, correct? Because I'm going to act on it and then I'm going to publicize it. Right, that's when the real thing happens, because once I publicize it, then people probably are more aware that, oh, okay, this is not viewed correctly, and there could be consequences which are detrimental, right? So that I think is another very key point, other than the normal platform usage and stuff like that. So that I think is key. So the other thing is we. Adoption is one, but the actual usage, like for example, all of us have done thank you weeks, correct? All of us have done thank you weeks, or whatever, thank you month, or jo bhi hai, something like that, correct? How many thank you notes have actually people preserved, right? I get one, I forget it, probably not what it was intended to do, right? So in your next pulse, you probably try and capture some data related to that. And if you find that, at least a reasonable number is kind of coming back and telling you, oh, no, I remember that this is what happened and I felt good about it, then your program is a success. So I guess these are key elements other than, the normal stuff which you can.
That's great. Yeah, and I'm very glad to have a panel who doesn't hate CFOs or CEOs for not giving approvals to the projects. And I think they're senior enough to sign it off on themselves. Moving on to you, Dimple. So now since 2025 is getting started, this is an exciting year. So many things are moving all across the world, both on technology and the way the world is looking, the geopolitical situation, the multi-generational workforce. And you also have people coming back to office more than before this year. What is your top priority in terms of employee engagement for 2025?
I think just engaging with employees is it's definitely key. How you do that is going to be is sort of the work and design on the design table. We have a number of initiatives underway where we're talking to obviously our vendor partners to make sure that we're able to create more engaging platforms for our employees. We have internal solutions already within the bank where we have things like the recognition tools that Pallab spoke about. Similar to that, we call it the at our best recognition for our employees. I think employees also need a level of hyper-personalization. So we're also working with leaders to make sure that they do a lot of engagement themselves through the existing tools, or through the enablers that are available within the organization, our technology enablers that are available within the organization. And then one point that I do want to say is that, we spoke about a number of launches and a number of initiatives that can be brought in front of employees. I think often we also forget about pause and things that have become obsolete, get rid of them. Right? Remove some of the clutter that may be existing. So one part of our exercise has also been in the recent past to undo a bit of history and unclutter or declutter some of the things that may become obsolete or may have become obsolete, to progress forward with a much more simpler, decluttered organization, clear, crisp policies which are more forward-looking, which have an employee at the heart of it, and the employee as the customer at the heart of it, driving some of those things that matter to the employee, that matter to the general ecosystem that offers these, not just to the employee, as much as possible to the employee and their families as well, because when I speak about benefits, benefits are not necessarily just for the employee, they get catered to the employee's larger ecosystem as well. So the intent is not to do more, but to simplify what we're already doing, declutter the things that may not necessarily be required in the day and age that we're today, and have a forward-looking, crisp communication approach to have a clear recall with our employees on what should matter. And then the other thing that I would say is, in which we consistently focus on, I personally definitely am very invested in it, is to really continuously listen to what our employees are wanting more. right? We have multiple channels, and I'm sure every organization has those channels available. But get into the heart of what is our employee really saying. Is the policy really working out for them? We've launched a policy, did a lot of rah-rah and fanfare around it, but is it really working out? If you're not necessarily connected to that grassroots, then what you will not get is that good culture in your DNA. So the intent should be to be very focused, have clarity and purpose, align to your values and strategy, like how we've said, and bring that to the DNA of the organization, so that it is a absolutely recall for every employee. They should know on the tips of their hand what are the benefits available with the organization. I would like my employee to go out and advocate all the benefits that are available to everyone in their network, to be able to then create my brand value much more. And I think a total reward value proposition helps you do that if done right.
Awesome. That's helpful. Yeah, Chinmay, I think you're right.
Yeah.
So what are the top 3 priorities for 2025?
I think I will club it together under 2 themes for us, because you talked about employee engagement. The first is inclusion. Given the demographics of our workforce is changing very fast, inclusion as a theme from an employee engagement standpoint is seeping into all our people practices and policies. And the second one is upskilling. Given huge technology disruption in our ways of working in all aspects, that's one area which is now not just a nice thing to do, but it's a cost of doing business for us. So I think these 2 themes are basically driving all our people strategies.
Awesome. Now we are moving to the last segment of the panel. HRs are typically infamous for being little uptight, so let's change that. Let's do some rapid fire question. None of the panelists here knows what I'm going to ask, and they have bravely accepted to let me ask anything on the rapid fire side. So we'll go, I'll just tell the name and we'll ask one question and then we'll repeat that question with the multiple people. So first question to you, Chinmay, since you have the mic in the hand. What myth about HR is wrong? What myth about HR is wrong?
That we are not business focused.
Awesome, that's great. Same to you, Pallab.
We take all the people decisions. We were discussing this some time back, and I was talking about it, right? They all teach you how to hire a person. They never teach you how to fire a person. And sometimes you're kind of asked to do a task which is absolutely probably not in your control, but you do it as part of your role, as part of the organizational man that you're supposed to be.
That's a great point. And moving to you, Dimple, a different question. What is your superpower that makes you good at what you do?
My grounding in basics.
Okay. Can you elaborate a bit on that?
Just be very clear on what you're after in the most basic sense.
Wow, that's awesome. Same question to you, Chinmay.
Listening.
Wow, that's amazing. Now moving to you, Pallab. If not HR, then what profession would you be pursuing? In corporate, outside corporate, whatever.
Sports commentator.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. Same to you, Dimple.
I am a very big fan of Harsha Bhogle.
Oh, wow. Same to you, Dimple.
I would probably be, I don't know, as in I've not thought of much beyond, as in HR hit me by chance and I've stuck with it for a while. I thought HR is the passion with which I was born and pursued.
That is great commitment. Now, again, let me ask you this question, since they have answered in a way in the previous question. What department or role, and it doesn't need to be senior leadership, is most challenging when implementing any HR program?
Finance.
We have the audience. Great. Do you also want to add to that anything other than finance?
Oh yeah, I think finance and technology do go hand in hand today.
Oh, wow. And let me
How many of you have worked with investment bankers?
Okay, the last question on this note. If you had no budget constraint, what would be one reward that you'd like to give to your employees? Anyone, whoever wants to take it, go for
Sorry,
it.
what was the question?
So if you had no budget constraints, then what is that one reward you'd like to give to your employees?
Pick a reward of your choice.
No, but then they can pick up $1 billion. So, but realistically, what would you give, given you have a free hand to the treasury?
You said that there is no budget constraint.
I
so
would
that's
like to
fine.
do more consistency of reward application or benefit application across all employees. What that means is sometimes some rewards are only applicable to certain levels because of constraints of monetary funding. But if you can do more by application of consistency, that just makes it a wow effect for everyone.
That's amazing.
I will make my life easier. I'll just pay them a little extra than the competition.
Great. Thank you everyone in the panel. Thank you everyone in the audience. And really appreciate for all of you being so sporting to answer the difficult questions as well. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for the fantastic host and the panelists. Thank you so much.